Welcome to Canada Files. I'm Valerie Pringle. It's been 6 years since show creator and host Jim Deeks launched Canada Files. And throughout all 6 seasons, he and I have asked the same question of our interview guests. And that is, what does being Canadian mean to you? And for this, our final episode, we've put together some of the best answers to that question that we posed to more than 75 prominent and successful people. Here are some of those answers, and we hope you enjoy them.
Oh my God, where else could this have happened, this journey? They let us in, they let us be who we wanted to be. So I love this country. I don't think there's another country in the world like it. And I want it to stay true to what it is, to the country it is, especially since 1982 when we got the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and really grew up.
Well, look, I'm Canadian born and bred, and I'll always be Canadian no matter where I go, no matter where I live. I'm currently living in New Zealand, but I think like a Canadian. I was raised as a Canadian. I'm proud of those roots. I'm proud of whatever the societal influences were that give me the value system that I take out into the world and that I try to bestow on my children as well.
We're ahead of our time in that we've always been very diverse. We've always had to recognize that in some way, not sufficiently to my mind, but we've always had to do that. And other countries are catching up.
My first state visits as representative of Canada were in Africa. And I remember when I started, engaging in bilateral, discussions with other heads of state, and many of them, Latin American heads of state, African, they would say, but you were not born in Canada. You arrived in Canada as a refugee. And I said, this is what Canada is about. It is possible in Canada.
Canada is all of my family are immigrants to Canada. It was the country that welcomed us and without reservation, that gave us opportunity, that made my mom feel like she was at home, that that educated me extraordinarily well for such a small amount of money, which is these days, particularly in the United States, is just an astonishing fact. So I just have, I feel I was privileged to be part of an extraordinary place at a really kind of special moment.
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but I am the biggest flag waver of all. I am so proud to be Canadian, which that feeling is shared by a lot of Canadians. Because growing up, we always felt that we had to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. And sort of felt the thumb of America on us, like that, you just had to work extra hard. And of course, I love America. And I love to say that Canada is the greatest country to be from, and America is the greatest country to realize your dreams.
It means being open to the stranger because we're constantly welcoming people from outside. And it's also cold winter mornings. That shared experience of going to school when you're a kid and and hearing the sound of snow under your boots. That's Canada.
I'm a proud Canadian, but I'm also a very proud Ojibwe. I'm a First Nation person. So while I'm proud to be Canadian, I'm extremely proud to be a First Nation person. When there's a sporting event, international sporting event, I cheer for Canada. Absolutely. So I live in two worlds, so to speak, proudly.
I know we're kind of divisive right now, but my prized possession in my life is my Canadian passport. This is one of the greatest places to live in the world. And I can say that because I've traveled all over the world. I know what people are facing out there.
No disrespect to my Fort Smith, but I start from relatively humble beginnings. sense of perseverance, which was the town motto, sense of community. You know, I'm the beneficiary of public education, public health care, public attitudes, you know, a real sense of being in it together. And of course, Canada's the world, right? The world is in Canada, and yet we're all Canadian and have that shared sense. So yeah, it means, pretty much means everything, yes.
As Canadians, we are also, I think we learn to be respectful of everyone, regardless of where they are in this supposed hierarchy, which is a word that's not so often used in our country. And I realized, and I took, I was conscious of this, and I took this really at heart to bring this Canadian way of leading an orchestra and of making music everywhere I went. And well, it seems to have worked.
Canada is, I think, the 11th or 12th happiest country in the world, and in indexes of, you know, really good countries, social progress index of all the good things you want in a country, safety and health and affluence and equal rights. Canada also is about, you know, 10 or 11. I mean, it's very Canadian not to be number one, I guess.
I remember when Bianca Andreescu won the US Open and was competing against Serena. Even though I'm here in Salt Lake City, I have a Canadian shirt on, I'm watching the tennis on the TV, I'm cheering her on, and I think we just have that amongst us. Even if we're in different parts of the world, we cheer each other on. Whether the World Juniors were just on in hockey, I'm watching that, cheering the young fellas on. We just have that real pull and camaraderie with one another.
Our legal system, to me, represents our desire to be a fair country. Whether we always achieve that, and every individual case is debatable, but there is this strong value that we are all equal in Canada, and that we have an expectation that we should be treated as equals, human dignity, respected. All of that boils down, in my mind, to fairness.
You know, we don't define wealth by the currency accumulated by the lucky few as much as the strength of social relations and the bonds of reciprocity that bind us all into a greater purpose, if you will. You know, we have a healthcare system that's designed to cater to the collective, not the individual, and certainly not the private investor who views every hospital bed as if a rental property. And our motto in Canada is pretty boring: peace, order, and good government. But the amazing thing is that's exactly what we've had since Confederation.
Tommy Douglas was a man I just admired so much.
He was the leader of the
That's
party.
right,
at the time.
and he brought in Medicare. Medicare was important to me. We have a system called equalization payments, where the well-off provinces share some of their wealth with the poorer provinces. I love that whole idea.
What a great country, isn't it? It has everything. It has democracy. It has you know, freedom of speech, gun control. You know, we have a social safety net that is at times, of course, it's frayed. No place is perfect, and we have a lot to learn, a lot to make up for. I mean, we look at what's happening, you know, with the Indigenous population and how you know, it's shameful, the things that we should have known and probably did know and chose not to act on, that we are now.
We have these natural lands that Indigenous people have enjoyed their life supporting and learning from. And when I was growing up, it was that connection and trying to understand what the role is of a human being on the planet, given all of this natural world that's around us. So I think being a Canadian has allowed me to experience that at a level that I might not have had had I been somewhere else in the world.
I actually am not allied to a country per se. I'm allied to values of a people that get embodied within a community that we call Canada. And my work is as much about bringing Canada into alignment with those values of justice, of truth, of compassion. And that to me is probably the best I'm going to be able to do on the patriotic front, while still recognizing that we have fabulous and rightful rights as First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples.
As an Indigenous person today, there's always a pressure to account for the terrible impacts of the past. And I would just say that for me, being Canadian means never forgetting, but also being free from being defined by that. And to say that I fully embrace being part of this country, and that I love this country, and I love the fact that my kids and I have so much opportunity.
Being Canadian is tied with the land for me, and the water, I guess. And secondly, I think of the word freedom. I've been very fortunate as a woman particularly to explore a sport, to explore my potential in so many different avenues. And I've been given the freedom to do that, and I never take that for granted. And we have to, as a country and as a people, continue to value and to fight for that.
I mean, it's so geographically diverse, so culturally diverse. It's an enormous landmass, it's unwieldy, it's, I imagine, so difficult to govern, and you know, there are just so many different communities with different needs. And so, but somehow it all holds together, and it's beautiful.
I think I had the most amazing thing that ever happened, and it was sitting on Zoom, watching my wife, this gorgeous, proud Argentinian woman, give her oath and become Canadian. And I cried so hard that, and she was cool too. She was doing the thing and waving the little Canadian flag. And yeah, I carry it with me.
It kind of means everything. In the Guess Who, we blatantly were called the Beaver Patrol, which has many meanings. We had the red maple leaf. BTO, our big gear. What's the middle of the gear? A B and a TNO and a Canadian maple leaf. It set us apart from everybody else.
All of us have hopes and dreams. We all have the same core values that we need to really, really reflect on and pull out of what this great social experiment means to us and to the world. Because if we can't do it here in Canada, where can you do it?
It's a great thing to be Canadian. I think we're extremely lucky, and we forget that sometimes. I mean, I don't forget it, but I think many people do. When I mention around the world to taxi drivers, to builders, you know, in my house in London, they come in from Poland and from Romania and Bulgaria and Hungary and Brazil, and I say, I'm Canadian. They go, oh, what are you doing here? They said, why aren't you in Canada? You know, I said, well, I'm still there a lot. But Canada, from them, is this image of, you know, a wonderful, free, enterprising country, and I really hope we can keep that.
I think we have this parallel universe up here, which in many ways, I think most ways, has a wonderful quality of life that is not so combative, that is more reflective. I think to a much larger extent, we're a nation of swing voters, that we don't self-polarize, and that if we're going to vote, you know, show me what you got, show me what you've got. Okay, I'll make up my mind. It's not, my mind's made up already. Our minds haven't already been made up, and I think that's a really important thing in a democracy.
And it was the former Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who said, this country is not just governed in Ottawa, it is governed by the actions and the ideas of all of us. So this idea of responsibility has always been central to my thinking, to give back to the country in a meaningful way by making a contribution to others.
I have left Canada one day for a job in an American university. I started at 9, and at 5 o'clock, I called my secretary. I said, I'm finished of being outside of Canada. I'm coming home. I have never looked at another job. That's not true. I looked at a job at University of Hawaii. More as kind of like, oh, okay, because I was told, let's come on over and have a look. No, where else would I want to be?
I boil it down to Canadians are raised with a fundamental trust in authority. Americans are raised with a fundamental mistrust of authority. And I think that manifests itself a lot of different ways. It comes from having a different birth as a nation. The United States fought its way through revolution into becoming a country. Canada was granted over a 30-year period to become a nation. And so we reflect our own pasts.
If a group of Canadians are asked that question and they start to really auger in to answer that question, we start to talk not about what it means to be a Canadian, but how we are different from Americans, which again is completely bizarre. No one else on the globe does that, but we do. What does it mean to be Canadian? All I know is I've never wished to be anything else but.
You know, so many of us in my generation, we grew up watching SCTV, and the whole joke of SCTV was that you were in Toronto watching a badly transmitted TV from Buffalo. And I think that's the reason why so many comedians come from Canada, there's something that just that experience of watching that TV from across the lake and having that slightly distant point of view.
Oh, I think I feel like a member of a very unique club. You know, there's only 40 million of us. And, you know, for years, people would always ask me why so many people from comedy came from Canada and in comedy. And I think, oh, that's a silly question. There's no border to the arts. And then they just kept coming. You know, Mike Myers and Seth Rogen. And so I think maybe there is something in Canada that we're kind of the middle sibling of three siblings, you know, the beautiful England, the sexy US, and we're this kind of, maybe our confidence isn't as much as the other two, but we have such soul and such wisdom, and we learn from everything around us.
I always consider myself as a person who would rather be in the back of the crowd watching somebody who loves being in the front of the crowd as being Canadian. That's almost the definition of, you know, of Canadiana to me. Don't put yourself out there, you know, it's not, hey, look at me. That's not, that's really not what it is. It's about kind of doing it, making sure you're doing a good job, do it right, and everything will kind of take care of itself.
Oh, I think that I'm part of inventing the Canadian sound. I don't know, you could think as Joni Mitchell might be part of the Canadian sound, and Neil Young, and Leonard Cohen. And growing up in Canada, we have a bit of a like, we're from too far away. We're not from the center of where everything is happening. So it means we have to work harder, try harder, and bring some talent to the table.
When I think of what my ancestors did to get here and to stay here, and all I could think is the power of hope. And if we can keep nurturing that and believing in that as a country, I'm that Canadian.
If you look at the Great Lakes and the 2 million, you know, lakes north of the 49th, it's over 30% of the world's fresh water. We have some of the vast, you know, tracts of forest that are still intact, and that knowing that that place exists up there, and that there's a lot of this thing we call nature, almost endless, is there, and that gives me some kind of comfort and knowledge that we have that.
I think Joe Clark said, you know, it's a community of communities. I think it's a place of places. And Canadians, more than anyone, I think, that I've encountered on the planet, understand and have this foundational relationship with place. And culture is nothing more than a human response to a place.
And that sort of northern geography, the change in daylight that we just sort of think everyone has, but they don't, it's all part of living in this more northern, cold, vast country, a land of rivers and lakes and mountains and glaciers and tundra. And even if you never see it all, it's all bound up with what it means to be Canadian, I think.
Being Canadian means that we understand that we're part of this planet. There are no walls around our country that go up to the top of the atmosphere. We have the privilege to live in this incredible country that stretches from sea to sea, that welcomes people from all around the world, that welcomed my own ancestors, coming from Ukraine, coming from England, coming from Ireland, that welcomes people today, but that cannot continue to be a safe harbor in the future if we don't tackle the climate crisis. So again, it's not about tackling the climate crisis for the sake of fixing that problem. It's about fighting for a better future for all of us, and this is the hurdle we have to get over to get there.
I grew up as a generation, quite frankly, of Canadians who were resentful that their country was overlooked. It never got the full praise for what it was good at. But in that feeling of poignancy, you notice the lakes are better than anyone else's lakes. And my gosh, our forests are fabulous. And don't we do a wonderful job of bringing refugees and immigrants into Halifax Harbor and the rest of it. So you took strong pride in these Canadian things.
What an extraordinary gift we have. We are, as a Canadian, we live in a society that is imperfect, certainly. Our history is deeply imperfect. There's a lot that we have to reconcile. But at the same time, we can send our children to school with a degree of confidence that they won't experience horrific sexual violence or be murdered on the way there. We don't fall asleep, as millions of people do throughout the world, listening to the staccato of automatic gunfire, feeling the deep vibrations of those bombs in the darkest of night and wondering whether we'll be next or how we're ever going to keep our children safe in that context. I've lived some of that, and I know what that feels like. And every time I land here, back in Canada, and I can close my eyes and that is not my reality, I am so thankful and grateful to call myself a Canadian.
It means that we're an example to the world. And when we travel and we have that Canadian flag on our backpack or our arm, and people see that, it means something to them historically. And we as Canadians have to fight hard to make sure that we keep that identity, that when people look to us, they go, that's a beacon of light. That's where I want to be in life.
Canadians sometimes have a very romantic view of our place in the world. You know, that as long as you have a Canadian flag on the back of your backpack, all doors will open and everybody loves you.
We're nice.
Oh, yeah, we're nice and we matter. But I think when you arrive internationally, you realize that there's the way people look at you also inform what you think of yourself. And then it becomes a little more challenging to live up to our internal conception of who we are. Mm-hmm. We can do more.
And also because as a Canadian, and having grown up as an international kid, if you like, I feel so strongly that we are a country that should feel at home in the world, and we can work with all the people in the world in a way that doesn't impose on other people, but embraces them. So that spirit of being a Canadian is extremely meaningful and important to me.
I learned while I was at the UN, Jim, that there is so much privilege attached to being Canadian. We are so well thought of, rightly or wrongly, in the world, that's the glow I embrace.
What I also find as an historian being very helpful to be Canadian is I don't have axes to grind. You know, I don't come from a great power, so I don't feel that I have to either attack or defend my own country. Whereas I think if you're American or British or Russian, if you're writing about the history of your own country, you almost can't avoid taking a position. I think being Canadian gives me a certain freedom writing about other powers in the world.
But Canada, we should be talking about acceptance. There's not a religion in the world that says, tolerate thy neighbor. It's love your neighbor. It's be open to each other, learn from each other, be challenged without being threatened by someone who has different perspectives or different stories. That's what Canadians do so well. And when we're cheering this flag, when we're in tough times and pulling together for each other, that's us at our best. And when we're at our best, nobody can stop us.
What is a leader? Is to inspire people. And for me, when people feel good, they go and buy a car, they go and take a vacation, they go and buy something for the kids, they go and have dinner outside. If they are depressed and they think everything, the sky is falling on them, they do nothing. So I thought that my job was, to be the cheerleader. Let's go, Canada is the best. You remember, that was the end of my speech, Vive le Canada.
And if you look back at Canada 155 years from now, people will say, there is a country.
The preceding program was made possible through the generous support of Clench House Foundation, as well as the following donors: Ted and Alice Kernahan, the Linwood Family Foundation, Jim and Sandy Treliving, the Browning Watt Foundation, Richard Pilasoff, Michael McCain and family, Richard Wernham and Julia West, Mary Davey, Tony and Sherry Fell, Bryce and Nikki Douglas, the 63 Foundation, David and Cheryl Carr, the Sheila and David Wilson Foundation, and by the Central Canadian Public Television Association.